Thought I was just gonna do it for a little bit, fail, and no, I didn't think I'd be wrestling 10, 15, 16 years later. Rey Mysterio took his mask off. And me, that was like an eye opener. So I'm not built like the 6 foot standard, 200-pound plus muscle guy. Honky Tonk Man, who was on the show, pointed right at me and goes, "Hey, that's what you don't hear anymore. Is the fans like it." So everyone has their bucket lists. As I've gone along, like I've realized there's things I'm checking off my bucket list that weren't on my list, but it was kind of like a starstruck of hey, got to bring my A game.
You've done your stuff with WWE.
My first WWE thing was literally on my own, 100%. Just 19-year-old kid. Of course, because I was the taller of the midgets out there, he wanted me to be JBL. And then a little while later, in catering, and one of the agents comes over and says, "Hey guys, sorry, your segment has been scrapped for tonight due to some timing issues, scheduling. We have to scrap it."
This is Best for Business with your host, Coach C, Chris Sanders.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Robbie the Giant's my next guest. It's officially time. It's Best for Business. Robbie, man, thank you for joining me for this one.
No, thanks for having me, Chris.
I mean, I say it's crazy every time, but like, I remember like 7th or 8th grade going to XWA Thursday night throwdowns, having school the next day, and like getting to see you every time. So to me, this is still crazy, man. So thank you.
No, thank you. Wow. I kind of missed my Thursdays.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For I think like 2 years, like that was my routine. Every Thursday night, I'd leave work at 5:30, be to work, and wrestle every Thursday. It was wild. I missed those days.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about your journey, your beginning. How did you fall in love with pro wrestling?
So I fell in love with wrestling. I fell in love with wrestling with Sting and Bret Hart I tell the story back in 98. The guy that my mom was living with at the time, he had, it was Monday night. He had the TV on, and there was this guy in red and black paint and a leather jacket, red boots, and he was fighting with this guy in black and purple. They all had long hair. I was like, "What is this? This looks cool." And lo and behold, it was Sting and Bret Hart wrestling around the building. And I sat down, and every Monday from there on, I would sit down and watch wrestling. So to say I fell in love with wrestling would be from watching Sting and Bret Hart beat each other up. To say how I love as wrestling to be a wrestler was Rey Mysterio, but we can get into that later. But since 98, I've been in love. So
to go with that, like what age did you finally decide like this is something you want to make like sort of a dream to a reality?
So in the back of my mind, it was always my dream, no matter what. So it was October of 98 when I started watching wrestling. In February of 99, they did a thing where Rey Mysterio took his mask off, and you could see how young he was. Granted, I already knew how small he was, and to me, that was like an eye opener. So like ever since I was 9, ever since I saw that, I wanted to be wrestling, and it wasn't like a do or die kind of thing because obviously it's very hard. So since then, I always wanted to do it. When I had friends that we'd beat each other up in the backyards, trampoline. So it was always a cool like one day we'll do this in front of people. And then when I was 15, 16, one of my best friends, a lot of our friends, we all wrestled, for fun. We did amateur wrestling. But me and him, his name was Ian, and we both kind of like, we realized we had more of a determination than our friends did. So we started looking at schools. We started, going to local indie shows. So I got to know more of indie wrestling actually through Ian. Like without him, I wouldn't know much more about like Ring of Honor, Dragon Gate, just anything that there is to do with wrestling outside of WWE, WCW. That was my thing. That's all I knew. But he showed me there's actually like you can do stuff out of just doing that. And so we went to, and this is not a dig. So Spike Dudley was the head trainer of Top Rope at the time. And we like, oh, that's a great school, major Spike Dudley fan. The only problem was that the school advertised you had to be 16 years old to start. At the time, I was 16, but Ian was 15. And, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to say, see, peace out, buddy. I'm going to, we were like, all right, well, we'll wait. We'll do what we got to do. Then right over in Seekonk. My mom saw this advertisement program for an indie promotion that was running that night. That was known as Eastern Pro Wrestling, and so we're like, all right, cool, we'll check it out. You know, we like wrestling, so it's a Friday night, and we literally we sat down. There's a program on every seat. We flipped to the back page, and they advertised the school, and they advertised ages 14 to 16 needed to have a parental signature, and we knew our parents they weren't going to say no, so we knew we had an opportunity. So that night, my mom his dad brought us to the show. My mom picked us up, and that night we were so excited. We showed her the pamphlet. You know, next day we're talking to his dad. We went to check out the school, and it was a real eye-opener, because at the event you would see all these jerks, these heels, these baby faces, and as soon as we walked through the school, the guy that I was booing was one of the first people there to shake my hand.
Wow.
And it was an eye-opener. It was how they conducted business really set the tone of, like, me and Ian want to be here. This is where we want to train. So we signed up literally probably 2 weeks after that.
Wow. So I see the career Robbie the Giant's having, but Ian, did he stop after a while?
So unfortunately, about 2 years in, Ian suffered a neck injury. He had a few concussions. Even so we both did amateur. We did high school and middle school. He had a couple concussions. So eventually for him, it came to the point where, hey, like, you know, need to slow it down for a bit. And then so he was going to take time. And then eventually he got into the Disney college program. Nice. While kind of recovering. Yeah. So, I mean, no offense, I'd rather work for Mickey Mouse than work in a wrestling ring. So, yeah. You know, he went off, he did his own thing. He's got his family. You know, we're still bestest friends. We stay in communication. And, you know, it sucks, part of it, because, you know, I know how much he loved it, but, you know, we both support each other. He's very supportive, and he still has a mind for business. A lot of times there's stuff like I go to him about, and he's always very creative. So, I mean, you know.
Yeah, that's crazy hearing, because I think it was like in January, I was for a little bit considering the Disney college program.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was considerate of it too. I didn't love it like I loved wrestling. I didn't love it like how he had the passion for it. And he went in January of 2009. He came in January of 2010. He never came back. From the program, he just kept moving up, and he's pretty successful down there. And, you know, that was his thing. So yeah, I miss him being here in a ring, but he's fine with what he's doing. He's happy. So
that's awesome. And to go with the training, I seen not too long ago, I think you did maybe a top rope show or something, and you had a shirt that said SOB, a student of Bob. So is Bob Evans your trainer?
So I always tell everybody, yes. So Bob Evans is my trainer. So, but I'm going to give credit where credit's due. It was Bob's school. Bob ran Slam Tech University. Bob was the head trainer. Bob also had some great assistant trainers. He had Dan Freitas and Revolution Chris Venom. So not only was it Bob, but it was a lot of those trainers as well that helped train me. But all of them were trained by Bob. So it was a lot of different Bob programs. And then from there, once I got on the road, Short Sleeve Sampson, who I wrestled for Midget Wrestling Warriors before we had the company, he was like my mentor. So I always tell people, Brutal Bob Evans trained me, Short Sleeve Sampson mentored me. Because there's more to just in-ring training than there is the other stuff about the wrestling business.
And to go with that, I think I was watching your interview you did with Don Kincaid. I'll put that in the description. But you mentioned, did Mike Bennett have a part in helping you out too?
A little bit. Not as much, because at the time when I was coming in, I think it was like not even like 4 or 5 months training wise that he actually went down to OVW for a while. Him and those 3 others, they were in OVW. And then when he came back after OVW, you know, he was around EPW for a while, and he was someone that I kind of looked up to in a weird way. I mean, not the typical like latch myself onto him, like, hey, I want to be, you know, kind of thing. Like, from afar, I always looked up to him because he modeled a lot. Like, I watched a lot of his matches, obviously, because I was a trainee, so I was at these shows. So he was someone that I kind of looked up to in a form of fashion. And when I had, I always liked him. You know, I'm always proud of his success and everything. But when I had my Saudi Arabia incident, he really went above and beyond from being like one of the best people like ever. So, you know, anytime anyone ever talks bad about Mike Bennett, which isn't many, I stick right in there. But I'm proud to say that Mike Bennett is in my top list of favorite wrestlers.
That's awesome. So over your career, you've been one of the, I would say, one of the most creative people I've always seen. So who or what inspires your creativity in wrestling?
So obviously, being that I'm a little person, little people is a big, you got to be very creative. Obviously, I'm not built like the 6 foot standard, 200 pound plus muscle guy. So a lot of my creativity, revolves around, who I'm wrestling. Obviously, not everyone's on the same par as they are. Not everyone is, up to speed. So a lot of times, like I just try to be a little creative. Also too, my creativity also deals with a lot of like who we're wrestling in front of the audience, because that's the main part.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if we're wrestling in front of kids, no one wants to see people just grapple holds for 15, 20 minutes. Like they want to see something funny. They want to see someone hit their head or miss something. When you're at a bar fight, they want to see people chop each other, punch, kick, all like they want to see, entertain. So a lot of my creativity goes adapting around like where I am, who I'm with, things for that. So it's all in the moment. But my part of my creativity I always think about is I think of me when I was 8, 9 years old in the crowd. What would have entertained me, or what's going to entertain this guy or that person. So can't always have the mindset that your formula works, because there's going to be there, and I've seen it. There's different places around the world where they expect one thing, or they want to see certain things and not just what you're going to bring.
So you kind of just mentioned it. I feel like not a lot of independent wrestlers could. How do you know how to read the crowd?
You just got to know off a reaction. A lot of times I always like to be like at least second or third. That way you can kind of see how the fans react to the first match. Or for a while, when with the Midget Wrestling Warriors, a lot of times we would go to crowds where they just went to see midget wrestling. They didn't know what wrestling is or lucha libre. So a lot of times you get those uneducated fans. So a lot of times I'd like to go be the first match to kind of help educate the crowd. So that way, when the next group, the second and third match come in, they know what to kind of expect, what they're going to see in these type of matches. So you gotta read the crowd. I like to name drop. There was an incident years ago when I wrestled for PWF. They were doing a deal with the Worcester Tornadoes at the time, and they put me in a kind of a match with the mascot. And I asked, can we put a wrestler in the mascot suit? And they're like, no, they can't for whatever legal reasons. So I had to wrestle the mascot, and I was already bummed about it, but it was a job, and tried my best to make it work. And it wasn't perfect by any means. Like it didn't come off the way I was hoping, but all I remember was like the crowd was laughing, the crowd was cheering. I was supposed to be the bad guy, the mascot was the good guy. But I got in the back, and a buddy of mine was like, "Hey, Robbie, how'd it go? Haha." And I just kind of shrugged, and I was like, "Well, the fans liked it." And like that's all I said. And Honky Tonk Man, who was on the show, was a few people over, and like he literally like stopped, pointed right at me, and goes, "Hey, that's what you don't hear anymore. Is the fans like it. It's not about getting your shit in. It's about what's gonna entertain the fans." So that kind of opened me up more to just trying to see what people are gonna bite at when they're
Yeah.
out there. What's gonna make them laugh, cheer, boo.
Yeah. That's awesome. But the first topic we talked about was XWA. So I remember going to a show where I think you announced, was it your younger brother, Mike Gamble?
Yes, Mike Gamble.
So how did that start with the Gamble brothers?
So that started with me just shooting my shot. So I was at XWA for a couple weeks. I think it was about my third or fourth XWA show that I was there for like throwdowns. I've been to XWA before, but this was like my third or fourth throwdown, and they had me actually, it was my third because I was wrestling Joey Bones. He was doing some referee gimmick with Buff Inc. So he had Buff Dad, 2Buff, and I believe they had someone else with him at the time. And I knew that they had a lot of the school people because that was Mike Bennett's school. So a lot of his students were there. And I knew Mikey in passing a little bit. He was always a nice guy to me. And so I was like, hey, buddy, like, what are you doing tonight? He goes, oh, nothing. Like, he was just there helping out, like, all positive, watching the shows like he would do. And I looked to Antonucci, the promoter. I was like, hey, since, they got all these guys, can I just have Mikey come out my corner? It'll be funny. He goes, yeah, like, you can be like your brother or something. I'm like, all right. So I made the joke, oh, since you have your Buff Inc. family in my promo, I was like, I brought in my little brother. So people expecting someone littler than me, and boom, here comes big Mike Gamble. And it got a reaction. And then from that point, I think Mike just saw that it was something for me and Gamble to do every week. So he put us together as the Gamble brothers for a tag team. And that was basically it until, he got more busier with more shows that he did, my shows. So we kind of separated without doing any of like the heel turn stuff.
Yeah.
He did his own thing. I did my own thing. And then it came to an end basically that way. But
Yeah.
I always like to say, like, it was not a dark time, but it was a time in my life wrestling wise where, I needed that spark to have fun. And that was something that made me come into, Throwdown every week because I was going to have fun with me and Mikey. Always had a blast, and it was something to be entertained by. Like, we got along, we clicked, and, we were both very creative. So it was a very good time, and it's something I needed at that point in my career.
So speaking of having fun, one of the things I think about with Robbie the Giant is when you come out, like, how fired up you are, the energy you bring. So for you, do you have like any pre-match rituals or routines or ways you get fired up?
Coffee.
Nice.
Coffee and energy drinks.
Yeah.
Normally Red Bull, because I would think if I have too many coffees before a show, I'm going to probably not have a good outcome. But normally hyped up on a lot of energy drinks.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not, a silent show. Like, you want to get people as anticipated as possible. So I'm trying to, be as crazy and animated as possible because they're going to see some little person running around and they're either going to cheer or they're going to laugh or they're going to think this guy looks stupid and boo me. So whatever, I always say, like, fans can react however they want. If they like me, cool. If they want to boo me, cheer me, but don't be a fake fan. Like, nowadays there's people that know the business, so they'll just automatically see a bad guy and want to cheer the bad guy. They see the boo, and I'm like, no, you're not adding to the show because you're just going to confuse all the people that are here for the first time. Like, cheer for who you want, boo who you want. So, I just try to give as much energy. I would be good if I did all the proper stretchings and workout calisthenics before the shows. I don't. But first thing I'm doing is I'm pounding a Red Bull, getting my gear on, and I'm normally deep into my headphones with blaring probably, some of my favorite heavy tunes just to kind of get myself focused and just warm up my own way. So tunes, Red Bull is the secret to Robbie the Giant.
What a combination. So when you think Robbie the Giant, when you first started, like, how has like the transformation for your career gone? Like, how has Robbie the Giant evolved? Whether it's gear, the way you present yourself, what's the transformation been like?
Well, one, definitely gear. I had not much of a concept before. So I was just kind of grabbing some flashy trunks or flashy red shorts or black shorts. Want to try to add a little bit. So that's why, added the singlet to my repertoire, kind of, match colors. Like, I still can't dress myself to save my life as far as, proper, coding shirts, matching with shoes and all that. So, dressing appropriately a little bit better now. As far as like growing up in the business, as far as like adapting, obviously I think growing up, obviously you can tell like I was a little person. So growing up, it wasn't a bad childhood, but you got picked on from some people, and some people just, oh, hey, it's Robbie, the cool guy, the cool little guy. So like wrestling helps me be more comfortable with myself and kind of embrace my situation, my difference compared to everybody else. So growing up in wrestling, it kind of made me change my work ethic. Because for some reason, when I was 16 years old wrestling, I thought I was going to be in the ring, I thought I was going to be square like everybody else. Like I thought I could go in and have a technical match with someone like Mike Bennett or Bob Evans. And
Yeah.
then, obviously reality really kicks in. So then I kind of adapted of, all right, well, I'm not going to be, a 10-second jobber. What can I do to stand out? And that's when, I did a lot of my little people insert things, try to work a little differently for that. So, I mean, it's definitely changed over the past couple of years before where I used to think I was a hothead. And now, I kind of work a little bit smarter because obviously I'm not as big as everyone, but, a lot of smarter than a lot of people too. There's a lot of big guys I've been in the ring with and they want to do, this spot. And I look, I'm like, why? Why am I going to do that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, makes me look strong. Like, yeah, it makes you look strong. Makes me look dumb.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, so like, I kind of branch off creativity of how, and I used to have my fair share of, when I was younger, same thing, wrestling with my friends in the backyard. I used to wrestle around with, my mom's boyfriends or uncles. Like I would jump on them and want to wrestle them. So what would I have done then that I could do now, or what would I have done then that I could do now somewhere?
So yeah, like I say it all the time. It's crazy. Like I've seen you wrestle so many times when I was in middle school. And then when I'm in college, I get to call matches of yours. So to me, that's been crazy to me. But I've seen you wrestle so many people. So has there been like one or two people, or even more than that, that you share the ring with that you've learned so much from?
I've learned probably there's not one person I've wrestled that I haven't learned something or from wrestling with them made me learn something about myself or in that instance. I think wrestling with short sleeve has been probably one of the biggest because obviously like we wrestled many, many times. So it's just adapting to the crowd, adapting to just being confident in what we're doing, knowing what we're doing, to being able to then, focus on the crowd and like kind of put everything together where we know what we're doing or we know how to now transition out of something because the crowd is going a certain way. So definitely like short sleeve Sampson has been one of them for sure that I've been wrestling and kind of learning different things. I mean, that's probably someone I can go in half asleep and still wrestle and everything would be okay. So
what was your first encounter with short sleeve Sampson? And then would you say the company was called Midgets Wrestling Warriors, was it?
Midget Wrestling Warriors, yep.
So how was your introduction to them?
Was actually Bob Evans, Chris Venom was my introduction. So for I believe it was about 4 or 5 months in to training at Slam Tech. At the time, short sleeve was local to the Providence, Rhode Island area. So they hit him up, said, hey, there's a little person here. You could maybe work with them a little bit or just, help him out. Kind of, he's still new, break him in a little bit. So a couple times he would come to Slam Tech. He would work, practice with everybody, work with me a lot of the times. So then from just doing that, kind of built a little bit of, all right, well, I'll throw this kid a bone. So he had me booked for a local indie show that he had coming up. Did a couple of those till eventually he's like, hey, I have these travel shows. I can get you flown out. And so it's just kind of building progression with there. And that went on for years and years and years. And then when he finally was supposed to retire, he got an opportunity to own and run his own midget wrestling promotion. So he wanted to start off with 6 midget wrestlers. And I was the first one, besides from him, obviously, because he was going to wrestle and own it. I was the first person that he called to add onto there. So it was very, very progressive from just being this person to use for, a quick enhancement midget match to, hey, you're going to be part of this company. And over 10 years later, I'm still here. Well, 10 years this year. So yeah,
Wow.
10 years.
That's awesome. So one of the topics I was talking yesterday to David Baker, telling him I was going to have you on, and he wanted me to ask you about Robbie Romance.
Terrible.
So what can you tell me about Robbie Romance?
Robbie Romance is dead. He died.
Oh, okay.
Should have never existed. He was terrible. He is something that everyone has found in some shape or another and loves it. I hated it. So the way it started back in 2009. Yeah, 2009. I was wrestling for a company called Lethal Pro Wrestling, and they had me with John Monroe, Masky McGraw, and Uncle Ulysses as the McGraw family. So it's basically a bunch of hillbilly hicks wearing overalls, And this is around the time, it was all comedy shtick, so it was just real comedy basic matches, no, or something stupid. It wasn't really doing much. And this is around the time where I was starting to really branch out as far as like I know I can do more. I'm capable of wrestling better style matches, and I wanted to do something different. I wanted to not do funny. I wanted to do something creative. So I pitched, I could be we could do a heel turn, and I can do my own heel gimmick. I never really done heel besides working with short sleeve that time. I was always babyface everywhere I went. Plus, too, mind you, I could not grow any of this to save my life. I couldn't grow this till probably, till I was about 25, about 26. I couldn't really grow facial hair, so I always had the clean cut babyface look. So I pitched this idea to the promoter, and he liked it. He went with it. So we did this weird, cool gimmick where, the McGraws was a farm family. So we shot this vignette where I slaughtered the pigs, did like this little whole blood, creepy, gruesome thing.
Yeah.
So we're kind of going towards like the psychotic thing. Did this thing. I did the heel turn on them, and then for the next event, he invited me to go to his studio, and told me I'm gonna be Robbie Romance. This is what he's at. I'm like, this is not what we were talking about at all. And I was just so mad. Because one, like at the time, like I was still trying to learn gimmick stuff, like how to get really into gimmick stuff. Like the funny gimmicks was easy, but like a serious, like it was like a Rick Rude meets Val Venus meets straight up heel serious. Like so I wasn't comfortable with Robbie Romance. Had to buy a robe, had to buy a little wine glass, a rose thing. Did that for a couple months, and it was just so awkward. I hate the commercial I filmed, so everyone knows that I hated Robbie Romance. Years later, I realized I could have done it better, but years later, like I wasn't comfortable doing it, so it was kind of one of those I was stuck doing it, and then years later, I probably could have done it better. I did it last year for one show, and that's probably the extent of Robbie Romance.
Damn.
But it was. I was glad when the company shut down because there was no more Robbie Romance. That's one company I was happy was closed because Robbie Romance did not have to exist anymore. So.
One of the things that you posted, I don't remember if it was this year, maybe last year, you got to do MoCap for I was at the Elite Pro Wrestling Academy.
Yes, that was last year.
So how was that? Was it for Virtual Basement, I believe?
So it was for Virtual Basement. So he was actually working on so it wasn't for wrestling. It was supposed to be. So I had hit him up, or somehow we got in contact, but he was also doing a video game that needed a little person villain character thing. Like he pitched the idea of what it was.
Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty cool. It kind of reminded me of like Kingdom Hearts for like horror fans kind of thing with like the character. So we basically did a whole day's worth of sessions like that. Didn't really, unfortunately, timing wise, haven't really gone back to do the wrestling portion, but that was something that was pretty cool. I mean, everyone has their bucket lists. As I've gone along, like I've realized there's things I'm checking off my bucket list that weren't on my list, but those are things to cross off, like motion capture for a video game. Not something I always like, I want to do this, but it was like, hey, I got to do this. This is pretty cool. It was pretty fun. It was a unique experience, and it was just overall cool. It was a fun time. It was fun.
Yeah.
Took a while, but it was fun. I liked it. So.
And then talking about that bucket list, I forgot. It might have been last year too, or a little while ago. Proving Ground, you got an action figure.
Kind of. We'll kind of consider that an action figure.
You got something. Not a lot of people can say they have.
That's true. No, Todd, who runs Proving Ground, Derek Simonetti, however, whoever we know him as for Proving Ground, he does little Hasbro figures. He has a little figure machine. So the show that he had me versus Brian Milonas wrestle, I was the profile figure. So he made a couple blue figure dudes of Little Rob the Giants. They're pretty cool. I got to keep one, which is awesome. Well, we got to the show, and as I was saying my hellos to people, my now wife went by him, and he handed her the figures, like, here is your husband's toy. So I got to keep it. So I mean, it's pretty cool. Me growing up, I wasn't in the Hasbro era. I was in the WCW Toy Biz era.
The
Jack Pacific WWF era. So like those, like when you're like, oh, you want a figure, like I'm thinking like that. I'm thinking like the new Mattel type
Yeah.
figure asks, you know. Like it's cool to have a Hasbro. Don't get me wrong, but I wasn't a Hasbro guy,
Right.
so it's cool, but it still doesn't have that same like
Sentimental
awe.
value, kind of.
Right. I mean, it's
Yeah.
still valuable, but it's not that this is what I had. But a new figure that just dropped as of 4th of July.
Oh boy.
Midget Wrestling Warriors. We now have our little
Damn.
stuffies. So now we have little Rob the Giant stuffy dolls that are now on sale on midgetwarriors.com and in all of our future Newport shows. So this is the newest addition to the Robbie the Giant official figure collection with my little boots, my shorts, my favorite t-shirt that makes me money,
Nice.
and nice little key face and all my tattoos, which is not bad.
So what was that process like? Did you have to like take photos of yourself, or like how that work for them to get like the tattoos
No, that
and
was
everything?
no, everything. That was just a surprise. That my boss just took the promo pictures, which is I'm sure what Simon Eddy did, and just kind of crafted artsy that way. These dolls came from Mexico.
Okay.
So someone in Mexico made these. The figures for Improving Ground were made right from Simon Eddy, so they were his artwork. So it's pretty cool. You know, art is a pretty fun thing.
Did you have to do headshots for Proving Ground? Because I know some of the guys he took like photos of like around their heads.
I think so. I know a couple times Picture Dave's been at a lot of Proving Grounds that I took promo pictures for. So I mean, my memory also sucks sometimes. So I'm pretty sure he probably said, "Hey, take extra shots of Robbie's head." So most likely he probably did.
So you mentioned it. What was it like wrestling Brian Milonas for Proving Ground?
It was again a bucket list thing that was like cool that I didn't really think so. Very intimidating. The first time I ever saw Brian Milonas was actually going back to my beginning. So Bob, when he had EPW, he would run his weekly television like internet web shows. So sometimes he would put on their shows from live events. He also had a studio taping. So about 2 weeks before my actual debut, Bob had a studio show, and Ian was in a handicap match against Brian Milonas, and that was the first time I ever like saw this guy, and he was you know, just big, massive. So I was like, oh my god, like this, like it was one of those like as a little person, like that's something I wanted to wrestle with because like I had, again going back to Rey Mysterio, there was this time where Rey Mysterio was wrestling guys like Bam Bam Bigelow, Scott Horton, Kevin Nash week after week. That's what I wanted. So like it was one of those like, oh, one day I'd want to wrestle that guy. Not right now, but so when the opportunity came up, it was cool. It was very, very intimidating. Cause obviously Brian's been around. He's been a trainer. He's been in Ring of Honor. So you know, it was kind of like a starstruck of, you know, hey, got to bring my A game. Got to, you know, see how he's gonna react because you know he's a big dude wrestling a little person, and you know he was very respectful, very humble. He definitely, you know, is very massive when he sits on you for the bonsai. But it was quite a thrill. It was a fun match. Definitely was hurting for a while, but it was definitely I was happy with the outcome. So
nice. And then when I was doing my research on you, like NCW is a place that you've done like everything for. You've won the World Championship, I believe. You've won the Ox Baker Cup. You've won Tag Team Championship. So how's it been your whole experience for NCW?
NCW. So NCW was the second promotion to give me like an opportunity outside of Bob's. I mean, granted, I had a few that Short Sleeve was bringing me to, but they were like one-offs. It was like, oh, we're going to wrestle for this place here, this place here. NCW was the place outside of Bob's, which he ran Eastern Pro, that gave me a chance to, you know, work every, you know, as much as possible, grow. And I did. And, you know, it's a place that I'm always going to be humble and, you know, love so much. JC Marks or John Casey, however he's known to you by, he's been the guy running it since day one, since I've been there. And, you know, he's always given me a place to go. You know, it took me a couple of years to win a couple championships, but when I did, you know, they kept on rolling in. The first NCW title that I won was the New England title. Won that twice, won the tag team titles. Now I've won them 3 times. Me and Kellen now hold them, even though Hard Hero stole them, but that's another story. Yeah, and then less than 2 years ago, cashed in the Ox Baker Cup to win the title, win the NCW heavyweight title. I've won the Ox Baker Cup twice. The first time I did it, actually, I think I was the first person to kind of call the shot. So where the Ox Baker Cup was used as like a Money in the Bank style. But in Bristol's my hometown. Bristol, Rhode Island is like that's my place. That's where I built, get a lot of like my local fans, friends, family. So I used that to call my shot. So me and BRG had a street fight for the title. He won that one, and then about a year and a half later, we had a rematch, won that, and then the following show won the Ox Baker Cup again, and then cashed it on Darley at the end to win the heavyweight title.
So speaking of things that not a lot of people can say they've done, you've done your stuff with WWE.
I've done a couple. I've done a few things for sure.
So walk me through the first one.
So all right. So the first one was Christmas of 2009. So this was when Hornswoggle was starting to do his stuff with DX. He was there for a couple of years, but now they were starting to do something really big with them. And they did this angle where he wanted to be a member of DX. They said no, and he all of a sudden sues them. So WWE hit up Short Sleeve and said, hey, we need X amount of midgets, little people, to do for the jury. So it was in Tampa, Florida, I believe. Yeah, Tampa, Florida. And so it was a vignette filmed at court with Little People Court. They had a little Judge Judy. They had a little bailiff. They had Hornswoggle, obviously. Unfortunately, Short Sleeve was snowed in because we had a major blizzard around the Northeast. So he did not get to go there. So my first WWE thing was literally on my own, 100%, just 19-year-old kid. So we filmed that vignette all day with Sean and Triple H as the protagonists. And then at the end of the night, because it was a Christmas special, they had Chris Jericho dress up as Santa Claus with Big Show in the ring, and and Hornswoggle with all the other little people. We came out and tried to attack Chris Jericho and the Big Show.
So then we go from that to years later, WeeLC, right? That's the second one?
That was the second one. Yep. So WeeLC. So this was before the Warriors was actually started. It's actually about 6 months before. This is when originally Short Sleeve was supposed to retire.
Okay.
He was on his retirement tour. So that Monday night, the week before the event, they announced that they're gonna do a WeeLC El Torito versus Hornswoggle. So then the next day, I saw that Short Sleeve posted that he was going to be part of the pay-per-view, which I thought was weird because I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
So I remember I messaged him. I said, hey, that's pretty cool. Your last year and you're going to do something for WWE again. Granted, he's done so many things for them. So he then called me and said, well, do you want to go? I'm like, well, yeah, if I could go. It was in New Jersey. And he's like, well, I need to find 4 more little people. And because they needed a referee, they needed someone to do the ring announcer, and at the time they had Bradshaw, Jerry Lawler, and Michael Cole were always the main ring announcers. Where like now they have everyone different shows. So those are 3. So they needed to have someone play all those parts. And of course, because I was the taller of the midgets out there, he wanted me to be JBL. I guess he got to pick. They didn't tell him who they wanted for who. They said, hey, like pick who can fill these spots. So I got to be JBL or WeeBL or JBL, depending who you ask during the time of day. I got to do that for the commentary portion of that.
So
day.
what was like that whole experience like? And then both appearances, Robbie the Giant's in a suit. So was that your suit? Did you get fitted for it? How'd that work?
Yep. So nope, that was my suit. So he called me up. So he called me on a Tuesday. The pay-per-view was on Sunday. Literally the next day, I went to Burlington Coat Factory because it was right down the street because they had a nice little suit section, and just got something that fit. Trying to do my homework. I was looking up a lot of like Bradshaw, JBL stuff, like suit colors that he looked at or that he had to try and match that. They said that they would get me a cowboy hat.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
They got that.
Yeah.
And they wanted my shoe size because JBL wears cowboy boots. So I had a fresh cowboy set of cowboy boots and a cowboy hat waiting for me at the arena after we showed up for that.
So
But the suit was mine.
I go on Facebook when I was doing research. I don't know if it was that night you met JBL as
Yep.
WeeBL. So what was
Yeah,
that interaction like?
It was intimidating as you
Uh-huh.
could. So before we got in the back and then they said, oh, meet us up by ringside. We're gonna get with all of you and go over your stuff. So as we were going out around ringside, at the table, Michael Cole was there and Brad JBL were there already, and we introduced ourselves, shook hands, and JBL was kind of excited. He asked, oh, who was playing his part, and I was like, me. And then the biggest thing is like, oh, did they tell you what to say yet or anything? And I'm like, no, they told us nothing. And he goes, well, just talk, don't worry about it. If they need to shut you off, they'll mute you. I'm like, that's the most intimidating thing to say, like just a free ball on
Yeah.
live television, live pay-per-view. So it was cool to meet him for the first time there. It was pretty cool. I got to meet him last year at Rhode Island Comic Con again.
Nice.
Brought the hat. I got to keep the hat, so I brought the hat with me. Had him sign it, take a nice picture. So that's something that's hanging up right now. That's very memorial to me. So that was my first ever interaction with JBL. Was that
Wow.
part?
And
Yeah.
then to go with that, I don't know how much after you got to wrestle as JBL for Top Rope Promotions.
Yeah, so a little while after that, WWE released Hornswoggle. He went on his little indie tour, as everyone does. Their first year, they get hot, they get everywhere. So Top Rope Promotions was bringing him in, and Brandon Webb, who was in charge of the booking at the time, reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're bringing in Swoggle. It's local for you, and so we want to put you together, and we kind of want to see if you could do the JBL thing." Well, yeah, that's fine. At the time, so I still had the hat. I just didn't want to wear trunks. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm not a trunker.
Yeah.
But I had my black singlet that I normally do. I just didn't bring my shorts. I grabbed an old school sweat jacket like JBL does with the towel thing. So I made, try to be as personal as possible. Got to come out with JBL music, which we'll go back in a second on that. Given
Yeah.
that, so did that. Got to wrestle him. First time ever in PAL that I got to have a match. I've never wrestled. Well, I've had stuff for Top Rope, but I never had like a match in the PAL hall for Top Rope. So that was my first PAL match for Top Rope. So to me that was cool because I saw a lot of shows there. I've been there for a lot of Spindle City Rumbles as one of the entrants. So that was like my first ever PAL match, which was a lot of fun. So it was a big deal. First time ever wrestling Swoggle, Dylan, Horn, whatever people want to call him. I usually call him Dylan. So if you hear me say Dylan, that's what I'm talking about. So that was the first time me and him ever wrestling, besides our interactions at WeeLC and the Raw, that we did that. So that was pretty cool to do. It wasn't a great match, but it was a fun match. It was fun. It was a really fun moment to have for that.
And then you mentioned it. You got to come out to JBL's music.
Got to come out to JBL's music. That's that's the promoter wants it. Promoter's gonna get whatever. I didn't bring the CD. They found it. It's very easy. So it was kind of cool to come out to JBL's music. It was actually the second time that I was JBL post Extreme Rules, or JBL WeeBL. So back to XWA. Before they got their throwdowns, they would always go to the West Warwick Civic Center. And their biggest thing that they were known for was the Extreme Rumble.
Oh, yeah.
Because at the Extreme Rumble, they don't advertise who's going to show up. So you come in and you could see this legend or this local TNA guy or this indie guy. So, you never know who you're going to do. So Mike hit me up about doing the Rumble as a surprise. So that Rumble, Carlito was the first surprise. So Carlito's music hit. Everyone was excited, Carlito's music, and Carlito pops out. So everyone was all excited. There was a total of 4 surprises. There was 2 before me, there was me, and then there was 1 towards the very end. The next surprise, I forgot who it was, but it was another, I know Vader was on that show too. I'm not sure if that was before or after. But Hacksaw was on the show too. So again, they hear music, boom, name comes out. They're all excited. So then comes the point where it's my turn in the Rumble. JBL's music hits. literally the place went nuts because they all were buying the fact that JBL was about to come out that corner. And I'll never forget hearing that pop and then looking at Mike, and Mike literally was like, hold on, let it sink in. And because he knew what was going to happen.
Oh,
so
yeah.
as soon as I walked through that curtain and they saw it wasn't JBL, it was just like and it was great because like,
Yeah.
I mean, part of me like years ago would have been like, why aren't they cheering for me? But like, I get it. Like, it's
Yeah.
a funny spot. And to me, it was hilarious because they all were like, oh, it's not actually JBL.
Yeah.
But then it was me, and I just did my stick. I got in the ring with Ivar, Handsome Johnny, Matt Taven. Were in the ring, so I, made sure I got my lickings in with them. So
Nice. And then you mentioned it earlier with Mike Bennett, and you told me about last night. What was your third?
So the third WWE event was was not WeeL, sorry, it was the first Saudi Arabia show. So
Was that the Greatest Royal Rumble?
That was for the Greatest Royal Rumble. So after I had that top rope match with Swoggle, we had one more up in New York, and then a little while later they announced the Greatest Royal Rumble, and we had our contact info with each other. So he had contacted me saying, hey, WWE's going to reach out to you. Don't say I didn't do any favors for you. I was like, okay, probably another extra work or something cool. So then I'm at work with my boss at the time. I was like, hey, if my phone goes off, I got to go make this phone call. It's kind of important. He goes, no worries. So phone goes off, and it's the WWE office, and they're like, oh, hey, we're interested in using you. We got your information from Hornswoggle because we need someone to wrestle him because El Torito wasn't available. And they're like, oh, have you heard so far the marketing of the Greatest Royal Rumble? I'm like, yeah, that's in Saudi Arabia. And like, yeah, that's where we want to have this match. No big deal. So
Yeah.
I'm like freaking out. There was things that I like, paperwork, blood work, physicals, exam things I had to do. Made sure I got all that stuff taken care of. For a while, I wasn't sure if we were going to have an actual match, if it was a pre-show match, if it was just a dark match, or if we were going to be like just in the Rumble for that. So then I remember when I talked back to the person I was communicating with, I was like, hey, like, I'm not sure if you do know this, but I was mini JBL for the WeeLC. Do you want me to bring my JBL stuff? What's my character? Because they didn't tell me anything.
Yeah.
So then they reached back out, like, no, we want to do the JBL thing. So if you have your hat, cool. For some reason, they wanted me to do like the old JBL when he was like Blackjack JBL.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
they were gonna have chaps made up for me, which was weird. So all I had to do was get the trunks, bring the hat, and my boots. And so I had about a couple weeks to prepare. So I like worked out, I was training, I was preparing myself. I actually had reached out to Ian, one of my little like I needed to have him moments. I was like, hey,
Nice.
like, I know your mom has the boots up at your house up here. Can I borrow them? I want to use them. So little things like I was able to use his boots. When I went to Saudi Arabia, went with everyone in the plane. It was about 12 hours one way. It was very longest plane ride of my life. Got there, checked in for the day. We were on the card. I saw we were like some way midway through the show. Saw the time cues, saw who we were working, and then a little while later, in catering, and one of the agents comes over and says, "Hey guys, sorry, your segment has been scrapped for tonight due to some timing issues, scheduling. We have to scrap it." Well, shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like probably like one of the worst things of my life to be like, sorry, you're not going on, but I was there. Like, I'm still there.
Yeah.
Like, I was there. I was in the moment. Was around a lot of people that not a lot of people would be experiencing what I'm experiencing right now. So, I took advantage of it. Mike Bennett was there, so I got to hang out with Mike Bennett. He was someone that, saw how I was acting and reacting that day. So like him kind of motivating me, giving me like positive that positive like pep talk kind of kept me going and thinking, this is, it's a shitty thing, not, to be canceled, but you're here, you're in this opportunity so make the best of it. Got to talk to a few people, got to make some connections. Makazi, a former New England wrestler up here, he's one of the main seamstresses. He's the one who helped me get my chaps all set up. So I was hanging out with him too. And where he found like a segue where you could watch like the entranceways from the ramp. So like when Undertaker came down for his match with Rusev, he like pulled me over, watched me, show it, because like it's kind of cool to watch the Undertaker's entrance live. I think no matter how many times you see it or don't see it, I think I only saw it once, and that was probably like 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, at that point. So to see it live from a different point of view was really cool. So it was a cool experience. Obviously the match didn't happen, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was great experience.
So when you first started, did you ever imagine the success you'd have in professional wrestling?
No, probably not.
Yeah.
I thought I was just going to do it for a little bit, fail, and no, I didn't think I'd be wrestling 10, 15, 16 years later now. I don't think I always said the goal was to go try and do something for TNA, something for WWE. I didn't think I would have ever done what I actually did for the WWE for that. And I just look at it as well as just having fun. Obviously, like, you want to have the mindset of success, but at the same time is just going back to earlier, like I look at myself as that 9-year-old kid. Like, what would he want to do when he's wrestling? Am I having fun? And if I'm not having fun, I don't want to be here. I'll be honest, like, and I've gone through waves of stuff like that where, things weren't fun and I just wasn't really wrestling for a while. And then when it started to be fun, then I was, kicking more. And so when it's not fun, not going to be in it. But I don't think if you asked me back in 2006, 7, that I'd be doing it now in this kind of capacity, I don't think I would have envisioned that. I think my goals changed as I've gone, year by year, every other year, every couple of months, my goals and things changed. Especially with Warriors, it's something where, it's part, I don't have stock in the company or run the company, but I'm a part of that company. So to me, like, that's something I don't think I would have envisioned being part of a company day to day like this too. So
when you look back at Robbie the Giant's career, what are like some of your proudest moments in wrestling?
Proudest moment would definitely be just debuting, actually having a match. My very first match in ring was in my middle school. It was me and Ian. It was me and Ian against Max Bauer and Handsome Johnny. Some of people know Max Bauer as Mickey Keegan when he went to NXT before he had his injury. And of course, Handsome Johnny is now Ivar in the WWE. And they put us over in front of our hometown middle school day one. Like, that's always going to be the greatest thing because, they took 2 green as grass kids, made us look as best as we could. And, we did not lose sight of being grateful for what they did, especially like when I became really more smart in the business of like, wow, like there's no way we deserved what we got there. And so it's something I'm always gonna be thankful for. So that's easily the first thing I'm always gonna think of is my first match there. Definitely the first WWE Raw segment with the Little People's Court, because it got me to be in the ring with Chris Jericho and take a bump. So that's gonna be, top. That's in my top 5 for sure.
Nice.
Doing that for that. There's too many. There's too many to list. I mean, I've experienced a lot of different things. I think it all depends on my mood of what I'm gonna rank number 1, 2, 3, 4 out there. So,
and then to go with that, and all the years in the future for Robbie the Giant, what is there left that you want to accomplish? I know you want to wrestle Wolverine and Danger Boy, but who else is on that list?
Oh, that's on the bucket list. So years ago, many years ago, so I grew up in Warren. My dad and my parents were divorced. So my mom, I lived in Warren. My dad, I lived in Riverside, East Providence. So very early on to knowing what wrestling is, I knew WCW. I was the biggest WCW guy. I knew the WWF. And one day I was flipping through channels to local cable access, and there's a ring it's a white canvas. It's got a red bulldog in the middle, and Danger Boy and Wolverine and Alfredo are there. And I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
I had no idea what it was. So every weekend, if it was on, I would watch it. And I thought it was like the greatest thing in the world. And then obviously as I got older, I kind of forgot about it until a few years into the indies, and they were, I don't know if they were at a Hall of Fame or a local wrestling show. I'm like, oh my God, like those are them. Those are the guys. And of course, obviously I've gotten to meet them, gotten to, talk with them, converse with them. It's like, you know what? I think this is a bucket list thing that has to happen. So, T, if you're out there,
it's
JC,
gonna happen.
I just need a partner. And, hey, I think I need a tag match off my bucket list. But
I would tell my dad when we first, like, me and my dad first started going to XWAs and a bunch of shows, and he was always like, all right, I'm gonna wear the jacket, and I had like the Raw logo, and I'm like, Dad, like nobody cares about that. And then we started going to shows, and wrestlers were coming up to him, and I'm like, all right, it's something. Then it was an art. We were at a live prod wrestling for Sully, and we're walking. I forgot to the car, and he's like, T just came up to me and asked would I come back to wrestling a Rumble, and I'm like, I don't know how this is gonna go. And like all these years later, I give them credit, they're still going.
Yeah, no, they still are. I think Alfredo is the RWA hype champion.
He just lost it.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, the hype tour's over.
Oh no, tour's over. That I was popping for that because we were doing a convention last month, and he was on it, and I was on it too. So I was awesome. Like, oh, I'm gonna be part of the hype tour with the thing. I was all excited. All right, well, good. That means he doesn't have to defend a singles title. It means he's tag ready. So, if you're watching.
So I like to have end every interview the same way. The day that it's finally time that Robbie the Giant decides to hang up the boots, what do you want Robbie the Giant's legacy to be remembered for in professional wrestling?
That I wasn't an idiot, that I fought hard, that, I took my short stature and made something out of it, and, I made it so little people can wrestle with big people, little people can wrestle with little people, little people can wrestle with women, everybody. Like, I want to be known as the shorter person that tried to work with everybody however he could. I'd try to keep myself, my nose clean. I try to keep out of, having any bad relationships with people. So I just want to be remembered as, one of the good guys.
Yeah.
For that, and just I see people all the time that, like kids, especially like little kids, like they want to wrestle. I want to be an example of, oh, hey, like you can be little and get into wrestling as well. So I'll end it on a story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So NCW was always my home. We always went to Dedham and Norwood every month. And we had an NCW show on Friday night. Extreme Rules was on Sunday. So at the time, I decided to have a mohawk for probably about 3 or 4 months because I could have gotten away with it. So for a couple NCW shows, I had a mohawk, and I did my match. My match was before intermission. I go out for intermission, and NCW is very known for having a lot of kid-friendly fans, a lot of kid fans. And there's this one kid, and little. He was tiny. He was shorter, and he's all excited. And his mom is like, "Hey, like he's your biggest fan. Like you're his favorite." Okay, cool. Like I know people. He probably says that to every wrestler that's here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way you're gonna love me more than you love Kellen Riot Thomas. But okay. So I'm looking at the kid, and he's like, "Hey, where's your mohawk?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's weird. Remember that?" I looked at his mom, and his mom's like, "He's your biggest fan. He really likes you." And I'm looking at him. He had a mohawk.
Oh,
He got a mohawk for that show.
Yeah.
To be like, "Hey, look."
Yeah.
And I felt so defeated because, like, oh my God, I would have had it if I wasn't going. Like, and I couldn't tell. I couldn't be like, "Hey, I'm gonna be on pay-per-view." So I was like, I looked at his mom like, "Does he watch WWE?" She goes, "Yeah." Like, make sure he watches the pre-show on Sunday. And I gave the kid a big hug because like that was something that was the first time like something from a fan really like hit me. I was like, oh my God, like I stood out to someone that they like. So like that is what I strive for, is like making some sort of a difference or a mark on someone, kid, adult, woman, man, whatever.
Well, Robbie, I want to thank you, man, for everything. Like I said, it was still crazy. I went from drawing pictures and going as a fan. So I believe Fight Life was the first one, and then I got to do it for RWA, commentate a match of yours. So
Yep.
thank you for everything.
Nah, thank you, dude. Thank you for doing us. Put a good word in for your dad. Tell
I
him
will,
Alfredo.
absolutely.
Robbie the Giant's coming for him. They
I
better be
will.
ready.
All right, man. Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching this episode, and this was officially Best for Business.